The old commander stood at the front of the classroom, his forearms crossed behind his back. Commander HFY looked out at the young faces staring up at him. These cadets were so young, so eager. They wanted to hear stories of glory and victory. They wanted tales that would make them feel proud to serve. But HFY had no such stories to tell. His compound eyes, scarred from plasma burns, focused on the star chart behind him. 50 years had passed since the great galactic conflict ended. 50 years since everything changed. These young ones had grown up in peace. They did not know what war truly meant. Today I will tell you about the humans, HFY said, his voice rough like grinding stone. Several cadets leaned forward in their seats. Everyone had heard rumors about the humans, strange tales that seemed too wild to be true. Before I begin, you must understand something, the commander continued. I have fought in 47 battles across 12 star systems. I have seen weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop suns. But nothing I experienced in all my years of service prepared me for fighting humans. A young cadet raised her hand. Sir, are the stories true? Did they really defeat the entire Alliance fleet with just 100 ships? HFY's scarred face twisted into what might have been a smile. The numbers were different, but the outcome was the same. However, you misunderstand the most important thing. The humans did not defeat us with ships or weapons. They defeated us with something far more dangerous. He turned to the star chart and pointed to a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. This is Earth. 53 years ago, most of us had never heard of it. It was just another world in the outer rim, populated by a species that had barely learned to travel between stars. They had no great technology. Their weapons were simple. Their ships were slow. The commander paused, remembering. The first reports came from the frontier worlds. Ships disappearing, trade routes going silent, defense stations losing contact with command. The Galactic Council thought these were simple pirate raids. Nothing more, a cadet spoke up. What changed their minds, sir? The day their first ambassador arrived at the capital, HFY said. I was there serving as a security officer. We expected some primitive savage, maybe wearing animal skins and carrying crude weapons. Instead, we got Dongmin. HFY walked to his desk and picked up a datapad scrolling through old files. Dongmin looked ordinary. He was shorter than most species in the council. He had no claws, no natural armor, no obvious weapons. He wore a simple black suit and carried only a briefcase. When he walked into the council chambers, several representatives actually laughed. The room was completely quiet now. Every cadet hung on the commander's words. The laughter stopped when Dongmin began to speak, HFY continued. He was polite, respectful. He thanked the council for allowing humans to join the galactic community. He spoke about trade agreements and cultural exchange. Everything seemed normal. The commander's eyes grew distant. Then someone asked about human military capabilities. It was meant as an insult, a joke. The representative said something like, I suppose your people have some small defense force to protect your little world. HFY set down the datapad. Dongmin smiled. It was the first time I had seen a human smile. I will never forget it. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a small device. Actually, he said, we have been preparing for this conversation. He activated the device, and a hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. Several cadets shifted in their seats, sensing the change in the commander's tone. The hologram showed our own star system, HFY said, but it was not a normal star chart. This map showed the location of every ship, every station, every satellite around our capital world. It showed our defense grids, our weapon platforms, our secret military bases. Information that should have been impossible for them to obtain. A cadet raised her hand shakily. How did they get that data, sir? That was exactly what the council asked, HFY replied. Dongmin's smile never changed. We have been watching you for quite some time, he said. Your security systems are interesting. We learned a great deal while studying them. The commander began pacing in front of the class. You have to understand this was the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Our technology was thousands of years ahead of theirs. Our encryption was unbreakable. Our surveillance networks were perfect. Yet somehow these humans had been inside our systems for months, maybe years, without anyone knowing. What happened next? Another cadet asked. Panic, HFY said simply. The council demanded to know if this was a threat. Dongmin looked confused. A threat? He asked. Why would you think that? We only wanted to make sure we could protect ourselves if someone decided to attack us. Surely you understand the need for adequate defense. HFY stopped pacing and faced his students. That was when I first began to understand what we were dealing with. This human had just demonstrated that his species could penetrate our most secure systems at will. He had shown us intelligence capabilities that we thought were impossible, and he spoke about it like he was discussing the weather. The room was so quiet that the hum of the air recyclers seemed loud. The meeting ended with promises of friendship and cooperation. The commander continued. Dongmin shook hands with every representative, thanked them for their time, and left. But as he walked out, he stopped next to me. "Commander HFY," he said, reading my name from my uniform. "I have read your service record. Very impressive. I hope we have the chance to work together someday." A chill ran through the cadets as they realized what this meant. I had never told him my name, HFY said. My service record was classified at the highest levels. Yet this human, this ordinary-looking ambassador, knew exactly who I was. He knew things about me that even my own family did not know. The old commander looked out the window at the peaceful campus. Ships from dozens of different species moved through the sky, carrying students and teachers, traders and tourists. It was a sight that would have been impossible before the war. That night I filed my first report about human capabilities. HFY said. I recommended immediate investigation and cautious engagement. I suggested that we might be dealing with a species that was far more advanced than they appeared. He turned back to face the class. My superiors ignored the report. They said I was being paranoid. How dangerous could they be? They asked. They do not even have proper warships. HFY's scarred face grew grim. 6 months later, the war began. And I learned the answer to their question. The humans were more dangerous than anything we had ever encountered. Not because of their weapons or their ships or their technology. He paused, letting the silence build. They were dangerous because they made us dangerous to ourselves. They understood something about warfare that we had forgotten in our thousands of years of civilization. They understood that the greatest weapon is not the one that destroys your enemy's body. The commander looked each cadet in the eye. It is the one that destroys your enemy's will to fight. And humans had turned that weapon into an art form. The bell rang, signaling the end of class. But none of the cadets moved. They sat frozen, waiting for more. HFY gathered his materials. Tomorrow I will tell you about the first time I fought alongside humans. I will tell you what I learned about their true nature when the shooting started. As the students filed out, many of them looked back at the old commander. They had come expecting stories of glory. Instead, they were beginning to understand that they had never really understood war at all. HFY remained at the window, watching the peaceful sky. We thought we understood warfare, he whispered to himself, repeating the words that had haunted him for 50 years. We were children playing with sticks. The next day, Commander HFY stood before his students again. The cadets had arrived early, their faces full of questions they had not been able to ask the day before. Word had spread through the academy about the human stories. Other instructors had begun asking HFY what he was teaching. Yesterday you learned that humans are not what they seem, the commander began. Today I will tell you about my first mission involving them directly. It was 6 months after Dongmin's visit to the council. The situation in the Outer Rim had grown worse. HFY activated the classroom display. A star map appeared, showing the edge of galactic civilization. Mining colonies were being attacked regularly. Trade ships were disappearing. The local defense forces were overwhelmed. The council decided to hire human mercenaries to help protect the colonies. Several cadets looked surprised. One raised his hand. Sir, why would the council hire humans if they were suspicious of them? Because they were desperate, HFY replied. And because the humans had offered to work for very little payment. They said they wanted to prove themselves as reliable partners. The council thought they were getting cheap labor from a primitive species. The commander's expression grew dark. My unit was sent to observe these human mercenaries. Our official mission was to provide support and coordination. Our real mission was to watch them and report on their capabilities. HFY turned to face his students. We arrived at mining station Korath 7, expecting to find a small group of human soldiers with basic equipment. What we found was 12 humans led by a man named Hyunwoo. The commander paused, remembering. Hyunwoo was not what I expected a military leader to look like. He was young, maybe 30 Earth years. He had a friendly smile and spoke our language perfectly. When our ships landed, he came out to greet us personally. What did he say? A cadet asked. He welcomed us to his little corner of space and offered to show us around, HFY said. He spoke like we were visiting friends, not military observers. He asked about our families, our homeworlds, our favorite foods. It was unsettling. The commander began pacing. Hyunwoo gave us a tour of their defensive positions. On the surface, everything looked normal. They had set up weapon emplacements at key points around the mining station. They had established patrol routes and communication networks. Standard defensive procedures. But something was wrong, another cadet guessed. Everything was too perfect, HFY explained. Their positions covered every possible approach to the station. Their patrol routes overlapped in ways that eliminated all blind spots. Their communication network had backup systems for the backup systems. These humans had analyzed every weakness in the station's defenses and corrected them. The commander stopped pacing. But the most disturbing thing was how they acted when they were not working. During their off-duty hours, I watched them clean their weapons while laughing at jokes. I saw them play games while discussing tactics that would have been classified secrets in our military. A cadet shifted uncomfortably in her seat. What kind of tactics, sir? They talked about acceptable casualties like they were discussing the weather, HFY said. They planned attacks and counterattacks for scenarios that our own strategists had never considered. And they did all of this while acting like it was normal conversation. The commander activated another display. This one showed the layout of Mining Station Korath 7. 3 weeks into our assignment, long-range sensors detected a raider fleet approaching. 47 ships, heavily armed. The mining station's defense force had maybe 20 light fighters and a few patrol boats. The humans were outnumbered, a cadet observed. More than that, HFY said. The raiders had military-grade weapons and experienced crews. This was not a simple pirate raid. Someone had hired professional soldiers to destroy the mining station. The display changed to show ship positions. When the alarm sounded, I expected panic. I expected the humans to call for reinforcements or prepare to evacuate. Instead, Hyunwoo smiled. HFY's voice grew quiet. He smiled and said, "Finally, something interesting." Then he turned to his team and began giving orders. "But these were not normal military orders. What do you mean?" a cadet asked. He told his weapons specialist to make it look difficult. He told his pilot to let them think they have a chance. He told his communications officer to keep the chatter interesting. It was like they were preparing for a performance, not a battle. The commander touched the display and ship movements began playing out. The battle started exactly as expected. The raiders came in fast and hard, trying to overwhelm the station's defenses. Our fighters launched and engaged them in space while the station's guns opened fire. For the first 10 minutes, everything went according to normal battle doctrine, HFY continued. Then the humans revealed what they had really been doing for the past 3 weeks. The display showed a sudden change in the battle. Several raider ships began exploding simultaneously. Others found their systems failing. Some simply stopped moving altogether. The humans had not just been defending the mining station, HFY explained. They had been studying the raiders. Every probe, every scout ship, every reconnaissance flight had been monitored and analyzed. The humans knew exactly who they were fighting before the battle even began. A cadet leaned forward. "How is that possible?" "They had hacked into the raiders' communication networks weeks earlier," the commander said. They knew the attack was coming. They knew how many ships, what weapons, what tactics would be used. They had prepared countermeasures for everything. The battle display continued. The raider fleet, which had started with overwhelming numbers, was falling apart. Ships were surrendering or retreating. What should have been a massacre had become a rout. But the most disturbing part was yet to come, HFY said. When the surviving raiders tried to surrender, Hyunwoo opened a communication channel to their flagship. The commander's voice took on a different tone, mimicking the human accent. "Hello there," he said. "This is Hyunwoo speaking. I wanted to thank you for the excellent training exercise. Your attack patterns were very educational. Oh, and please tell whoever hired you that mining station Korath 7 is under human protection now. They might want to find a new target." The cadet sat in stunned silence. The human was not just defeating the enemy, HFY continued. He was sending a message to everyone who might be listening. He was letting them know that humans were not just another mercenary group. They were something new. "What happened to the raiders?" a cadet asked. "The humans captured their ships and crews," HFY said. But instead of destroying them or turning them over to authorities, they offered them a choice. The raiders could go to prison, or they could join the human mercenary company and help protect other colonies. Did any of them accept? Most of them, the commander replied. Within a week, the human force had doubled in size. They had turned their enemies into allies simply by treating them with respect and offering them a better option. HFY deactivated the display. After the battle, I filed my second report about human capabilities. I recommended immediate strategic review of our relationship with this species. I suggested that we were dealing with beings who understood warfare at a level we had never reached. What did your superiors say? They said the humans had gotten lucky, HFY said bitterly. They said it was a fluke, that no primitive species could consistently perform at that level. They ordered my unit to continue observation but warned me not to exaggerate in my reports. The commander looked out the window again. 3 days later, I learned something else about humans that changed my understanding forever. What was that, sir? I was injured during a patrol when my scout ship crashed, HFY said. Nothing serious, but I was unconscious for several hours. When I woke up, I was in the human medical bay. The commander touched one of his scars. Their medic was a woman named Jiun. She was humming while she worked on my injuries. Humming like she was enjoying herself. When I asked why, she said she loved her job because she got to fix things that were broken. She treated me with the same care she would have given one of her own people, HFY continued. She explained every procedure, made sure I was comfortable, even brought me food from my home world. I asked her why she was being so kind to an alien soldier. HFY's voice grew soft. She looked at me like the question confused her. Why wouldn't I? She said. You're hurt and I'm a doctor. That's all that matters. This was the same woman who, hours earlier, had been discussing the most efficient ways to disable enemy ships without killing the crews, the commander said. She could plan tactical strikes with surgical precision, then perform actual surgery with the same precision. And she saw no contradiction between these roles. A cadet raised her hand. Commander, what did you learn from all this? HFY was quiet for a long moment. I learned that humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they are warriors. They are dangerous because they can be anything they need to be. Warriors when they must fight. Healers when they must save lives. Teachers when they must share knowledge. Leaders when others need guidance. They do not see these as separate roles, he continued. To them, it is all part of the same job, protecting the things they care about. And once humans decide that Key Commander HFY arrived at his classroom to find it packed, word had spread beyond the academy. Senior officers, visiting dignitaries, and even some civilian researchers had come to hear the human stories. The old commander looked at the crowd and shook his head. I see my reputation has grown, he said. Very well. Today I will tell you about the day the war truly began. The day the Hegemony Alliance decided that humans were too dangerous to exist as a free species. The room grew quiet. Everyone knew about the Hegemony Alliance, the coalition of the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations. They had ruled space for thousands of years. The Alliance had been watching human activities for months, HFY continued. Every report made them more nervous. Humans were not just good soldiers. They were changing the way other species thought about warfare, about cooperation, about what was possible. The commander activated the display. It showed a peaceful-looking world with blue oceans and green continents. This is Corvanus, a human colony world with about 2 million inhabitants, mostly farmers, miners, and their families. No major military installations, no strategic importance. The Alliance chose it as an example. A senior officer in the back raised his hand. What kind of example? The kind that would terrify every other species into submission, HFY said grimly. The Alliance fleet arrived at Corvanus with over 300 warships, the largest military force assembled in galactic history. Their message was simple: surrender immediately or be destroyed. The display showed the massive fleet surrounding the small planet. I was there serving as an intelligence officer aboard the flagship. The Alliance commanders expected instant surrender. What colony world could resist such overwhelming force? But the humans refused? Not exactly, HFY said. The colonial administrator, a woman named Ram, sent a response. She asked for 24 hours to consider the Alliance terms. The commanders agreed, thinking she needed time to organize the surrender. The commander paused, remembering. That night, our sensors detected massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Construction equipment was working around the clock. We thought they were building bunkers or maybe trying to hide their most important facilities. What were they actually doing? Something we never imagined, HFY replied. They were preparing to give up their sky. The display changed to show cross-section views of the planet. Within hours, the humans had begun moving their entire civilization underground. Not just military installations, everything. Schools, hospitals, farms, factories. They were literally burying their world. A cadet in the front row looked confused. How is that possible in just one day? It should not have been, the commander admitted. But humans had been planning for this possibility since they first arrived on Corvanus. Every building had been constructed with underground expansion in mind. Every tunnel system connected to every other tunnel system. They had designed their entire colony to disappear if necessary. When the 24 hours ended, Boram sent another message. HFY continued. She thanked the Alliance for giving them time to prepare, then made an announcement that shocked everyone listening. The commander's voice changed, mimicking the human accent again. You have made our sky dangerous, she said. So we have learned to live without it. You have taken our sun, so we have made our own. You want our world? Come and take it. The orbital bombardment began immediately, HFY said. For 6 months, the Alliance fleet pounded the planet's surface with every weapon they had. Plasma cannons, fusion bombs, gravitational disruptors. We turned the surface of Corvanus into molten glass. The display showed the devastation from space. The once green world had become a black, scarred wasteland. Our commander celebrated, the commander continued. No civilization could survive that level of destruction. The human colony had to be extinct. But they were not. When our ground forces finally landed, they found entrances to the tunnel system still intact, HFY said. The humans had built their underground cities to withstand exactly the kind of bombardment we had used. They had studied our weapons, analyzed our tactics, and prepared countermeasures. The commander walked closer to his audience. I was part of the first wave to enter the tunnels. We expected to find survivors hiding in caves, desperate and broken. Instead, we found a functioning civilization that had adapted to live entirely underground. The tunnels were not crude shelters, he continued. They were an underground city with its own power systems, air recycling, food production, and manufacturing. The humans had hydroponics farms growing food under artificial light. They had workshops producing weapons and equipment. They even had schools where children continued their education as if nothing had changed. A visiting researcher leaned forward. How extensive were these tunnel systems? They covered the entire planet, HFY said. Thousands of kilometers of interconnected passages, and the humans had learned to use them as a weapon. The display changed to show tunnel layouts. Our troops advanced into what looked like main corridors, only to find themselves in killing zones. The humans had designed every intersection, every room, every passage to funnel invaders into predetermined locations where they could be eliminated efficiently. But the most disturbing thing was not the tactical situation, the commander continued. It was the people we encountered. Human children, some barely old enough to walk, served as messengers and scouts. They knew those tunnels better than our soldiers knew their own ships. HFY's voice grew quiet. I will never forget watching a 4-year-old human child guide a squad of our troops into an ambush. She was humming the same tune I had heard Ji-Eun sing while treating patients. The child showed no fear, no hatred. To her, this was just a game. The room was completely silent. The siege lasted 18 months, the commander continued. We lost more troops in those tunnels than in the previous 50 years of galactic conflicts combined. Not because the humans were better armed or better trained, because they had turned their entire world into a weapon that thought like they did. How did it end? A senior officer asked. The humans made an offer that no one saw coming, HFY said. Boram contacted the Alliance fleet directly. She said the humans were willing to evacuate Corvanus, but only under specific conditions. What conditions? They wanted the Alliance to provide transportation for every human on the planet, the commander explained. Not just to any world, but to worlds of their choosing where they could establish new colonies. They wanted full compensation for everything they were leaving behind. And they wanted a formal apology from the Alliance for the illegal attack on their civilian population. The audience stirred. These were not the demands of a defeated enemy. The Alliance commanders were furious, HFY continued. They had spent 18 months and thousands of lives trying to defeat this colony. Now the humans were negotiating as if they had won. But that was exactly the point, he said. The humans had won, not by defeating the Alliance fleet, but by proving that they could not be defeated. They had survived everything we could throw at them and were still making demands. The commander looked around the room. The Alliance agreed to the human terms, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. The alternative was to continue the siege indefinitely while the humans slowly bled them dry. As the evacuation began, I was assigned to observe the process, HFY said. I watched families emerge from the tunnels carrying their possessions. Children who had lived underground for over a year stepped into sunlight for the first time since the bombardment began. What struck me most was their attitude, he continued. These people had lost their world, their homes, everything they had built. But they were not defeated. They were planning. Even as they boarded the transport ships, they were discussing where to go next, what to build, how to make their new homes even better than what they had lost. Boram was the last to leave, the commander said. Before boarding her ship, she walked over to where I was standing. She looked up at the Alliance fleet still positioned in orbit, then back at the ruined surface of her world. HFY's voice grew soft. Thank you, she said to me. For what? I asked. For teaching us what we needed to learn, she replied. We thought we understood survival. Now we know we understand adaptation. She handed me a data pad, the commander continued. It contained complete architectural plans for the underground city, detailed analyses of our bombardment patterns, and tactical assessments of our ground operations. Everything the humans had learned during the siege. Why did she give you this information? A cadet asked. Because you will need it, she said. Someday your people might face what we faced. When that day comes, you will remember that survival is not about being strong enough to fight your enemies. It is about being smart enough to make fighting you too expensive to continue. The commander deactivated the display. The evacuation of Corvanus was completed without incident. The humans left peacefully, taking nothing but their knowledge and their determination to never be caught unprepared again. What happened to the planet afterward? The Alliance tried to establish their own colony there, Thex. Commander HFY looked out at his audience. The room was even more crowded today. Representatives from a dozen different species had come to hear about the humans. Some looked skeptical. Others appeared worried. All of them wanted to understand what they were dealing with. After Corvanus, both sides knew this was no ordinary conflict, the commander began. The Alliance had learned that humans could not be destroyed through conventional warfare. The humans had learned that the Alliance would stop at nothing to eliminate them. What followed was a different kind of war. HFY activated the display. It showed star maps with marked locations across multiple systems. Human special operations teams began appearing throughout Alliance territory. Small groups, usually 4 or 5 individuals, causing chaos far beyond what their numbers should have allowed. What kind of chaos? Asked a military observer from the back. Supply convoys vanishing without a trace. Communication networks failing at critical moments. Entire military bases losing power during important operations. The commander paused. But the strangest part was what happened to the populations of worlds where these teams operated. What do you mean? A cadet asked. They began to resist, HFY said simply. Species that had been loyal Alliance members for centuries suddenly started questioning orders. Workers went on strike. Local officials refused to cooperate with military commands. It was like a disease spreading from world to world. The commander touched the display, highlighting one particular star system. I was assigned to track down one of these human teams. Intelligence suggested they were operating in the Kethmore system, turning 3 different species against Alliance authority. How many humans were you hunting? 4, HFY replied. 4 humans against an entire star system's security forces. My superiors expected the mission to take a few days at most. The display changed to show personnel files. 4 human faces appeared on the screen. Team leader was Taeho, a former colony defense coordinator. Their sniper was So Jin, who had trained as a geological engineer before the war. Minji handled communications and had been a teacher. Their demolitions expert was their youngest member, barely 20 years old. They sound like civilians, a cadet observed. That was what made them so dangerous, HFY said. They were not career soldiers. They were ordinary people who had learned to fight because they had to, and they fought like civilians, not like military personnel. What is the difference? Military personnel follow rules, the commander explained. They have codes of conduct, standard operating procedures, predictable tactics. Civilians who are forced to fight have only one rule: win by any means necessary. The display showed ship tracking data. We followed their trail across 3 star systems. Every world they visited experienced the same pattern. First, mysterious technical failures that embarrassed local authorities. Then information leaks that revealed corruption or incompetence among Alliance officials. Finally, local populations that suddenly remembered they had rights. HFY began pacing. It took us 6 months to finally corner them. We tracked their ship to a mining moon in an empty system. 47 Alliance vessels surrounded one small human transport. We had overwhelming superiority. What went wrong? Nothing went wrong, the commander said. Everything went exactly as the humans had planned. The display showed the moon's surface. When we landed, Tejo was waiting for us, just standing there in the open wearing no armor, carrying no visible weapons. When my troops surrounded him, he smiled and said something that still haunts me. What did he say? "Sorry about this," HFY quoted. That was all. Sorry about this. Then he activated a device in his hand. The commander paused for effect. The device was not a weapon. It was a communication transmitter. All across the system, ships that we thought were disabled or abandoned suddenly came alive. They were not human ships. They were Alliance vessels that had been reported destroyed over the past year. The humans had been capturing our ships, a senior officer asked, looking alarmed. Better than that, HFY replied. They had been convincing our crews to defect. Every vessel we thought they had destroyed had actually been captured intact, along with its entire crew. The humans had spent months turning our own people against us. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. This was beyond anything they had imagined. How is such a thing possible? Demanded a Alliance representative who had been sitting quietly until now. By treating prisoners better than the Alliance treated its own soldiers, HFY said bluntly. The humans showed captured crews evidence of how little the Alliance leadership cared about their welfare. Communications logs proving that crews were considered expendable. Supply records showing that equipment money was being diverted to luxury items for commanders. They provided medical care, good food, and communication with families. The commander continued. Things that Alliance regulations promised but rarely delivered. Within weeks, most prisoners were volunteering to help their captors. The display showed battle formations. The trap was perfect. We had surrounded 4 humans with 47 ships. But those 4 humans had convinced over 200 Alliance vessels to switch sides. In one moment, we went from overwhelming advantage to desperate disadvantage. What happened to your fleet? Most of them surrendered immediately, HFY admitted. When your own allies turn their weapons on you, resistance becomes pointless. But the real shock was yet to come. The commander activated another display. While we were focused on the space battle, Sojin had been working on the moon's surface. She was not just their sniper. She was also an expert in mining equipment. The moon was an active mining operation, he explained. Sojin had spent weeks modifying the mining charges and excavation equipment. When the battle began, she turned the entire moon into a weapon. How? Precision demolition on a planetary scale, HFY said with grudging admiration. She triggered landslides that blocked our landing zones. She created electromagnetic pulses that disrupted our communication systems. She even used mining lasers as anti-ship weapons. One person did all that. One person who understood that every tool can become a weapon if you think creatively enough, the commander replied. Sojin was not trying to kill us. She was trying to make it impossible for us to function as a military force, and she succeeded completely. HFY walked closer to his audience, but the most disturbing part of the entire encounter was Minji, their communications specialist. What did she do? She had hacked into our personal communication systems, the commander said quietly. Not our military networks, our private messages to family and friends. She had been reading our personal correspondence for months. The room fell silent. This was a violation beyond military defeat. When we were finally captured, each member of my unit found a personal message from Minji in our private files. HFY continued. She had written individual notes to every soldier, thanking us for our service and expressing hope that we would all see our families again soon. She had learned about our children, our spouses, our fears and dreams, he said. She knew more about us than our own commanders did, and she used that knowledge not to hurt us, but to remind us that we were people, not just soldiers. A cadet raised her hand. Why would she do that? To show us that humans saw us as individuals, not as enemies, HFY explained. Minji could have used our personal information to threaten us or manipulate us. Instead, she used it to demonstrate human compassion. What happened after you were captured? Taeho offered us the same choice they had given everyone else, the commander said. We could be treated as prisoners of war and eventually returned to Alliance territory. Or we could join the human cause and help protect civilian populations from military aggression. Did anyone accept? Half of my unit switched sides immediately, HFY admitted. The other half, including myself, chose to remain prisoners. But even as prisoners, we were treated better than we had ever been treated as Alliance soldiers. The commander deactivated the display. The humans kept us in a facility that was more like a university than a prison. We attended lectures about galactic history, human philosophy, and alternative approaches to interspecies relations. We had access to libraries, recreational facilities, and regular communication with our families. They were trying to educate you? They were trying to help us understand why they were fighting, HFY said. Not to convert us, but to show us that there were alternatives to the Alliance way of thinking about galactic civilization. During my 6 months as a prisoner, I learned more about other species and cultures than I had in 20 years of military service. He continued. The humans had created an environment where learning was encouraged, where questions were welcome, where different viewpoints could be discussed openly. An older officer leaned forward. Commander, what was your conclusion about human motivations? HFY considered the question carefully. I realized that humans were not fighting to conquer the galaxy, he said. They were fighting to save it from itself. They had seen how the Alliance treated dissent, how it crushed independence, how it reduced every species to a single role in a vast machine. The humans wanted something the galaxy had never seen before, he continued. A civilization where different species could cooperate as equals, where strength came. The lecture hall was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy had come to hear the conclusion of Commander HFY's story. News services were broadcasting the session live across dozens of star systems. Everyone wanted to know how the great galactic conflict had really ended. Commander HFY stood at the front of the room, looking older than his years. The weight of 50 years of memories showed in his scarred features. Today he would tell the hardest part of his story. The Alliance High Command had reached a desperate conclusion, he began. Every conventional military strategy had failed. Human influence was spreading throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Entire sectors were declaring independence. The Alliance was falling apart. The commander activated the main display. It showed the Sol system, with Earth at its center surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol fleets. They decided that the only way to end the human threat was to destroy Earth itself. HFY continued. Not just defeat it, not just occupy it, but completely obliterate the human homeworld. They believed this would break human morale and end the rebellion. A senior military observer leaned forward. How large was the assault force? Every available ship in the Alliance fleet, the commander replied. Over 1,500 warships, including super dreadnoughts that had never been used in combat. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. I was aboard the flagship as a strategic analyst. The display changed to show massive fleet formations moving through hyperspace. The plan was simple, HFY explained. Emerge from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numbers. Use planet-killer weapons to destroy the human homeworld within hours. End the war in a single decisive battle. What went wrong? Nothing went wrong with our plan, the commander said quietly. The problem was that we were not the only ones with a plan. The display shifted to show the moment the Alliance fleet emerged from hyperspace. Instead of finding a desperate defensive force, they found something that changed everything. The entire human fleet was waiting for us, HFY said. Not hiding, not scrambling to defensive positions, but formed up in perfect battle formations as if they had known exactly when and where we would arrive. Murmurs rippled through the audience. This should have been impossible. Leading the human fleet was Admiral Chan Ho aboard the dreadnought Indomitable, the commander continued. But these were not the same desperate fighters we had been battling for years. These humans had learned, adapted, and evolved their tactics with terrifying speed. How could you tell? Their ship formations were perfect copies of our own tactical doctrine, HFY explained. But improved. Every weakness in Alliance battle strategy had been corrected. Every gap in our defenses had been eliminated. They had taken our own military knowledge and made it better. The commander walked closer to his audience. But the real shock came when Admiral Chan Ho opened communication channels to our fleet, not just to the command ships but to every vessel in the Alliance formation. He spoke to individual soldiers? He spoke to everyone, HFY said. Admirals and engineers, pilots and cooks, commanders and maintenance crews. His message was broadcast simultaneously to every person in our fleet. The commander's voice changed as he quoted the human admiral. I am Admiral Chan Ho of the Human Defense Fleet. I want to speak directly to every person listening to this message. Not to your commanders, not to your governments, but to you as individuals. The room was completely silent. We know why you are here, Chan Ho continued. Your leaders have told you that humans are a threat to galactic civilization. They have told you that we must be destroyed to preserve peace and order. But I want you to know what we are really fighting for. HFY paused, remembering the moment that had changed his understanding of everything. We are fighting for the right of every species to choose its own path, the Admiral had said. We are fighting for the idea that strength comes from cooperation, not domination. We are fighting for a galaxy where your children can grow up free to become whatever they choose to be. What was the reaction among your fleet? Asked a cadet. Confusion at first, the commander replied. No enemy had ever spoken to Alliance forces this way before. Our commanders ordered communication blackouts, but it was too late. Every soldier in the fleet had heard the human message. Chan Ho continued speaking. HFY said, I know that many of you joined your military services to protect your families and worlds. I know that many of you believe you are serving a noble cause. But I ask you to consider this. When was the last time your commanders asked what you wanted? When was the last time your leaders cared about your opinions or your welfare? The display showed communication logs scrolling past. Our own data networks were suddenly flooded with intercepted messages, the commander explained. Communications between Alliance High Command discussing casualty projections. Records of supply shortages caused by corruption. Evidence that common soldiers were considered expendable resources. The humans had been inside our systems for months, he continued. But instead of using that access to sabotage our weapons or steal our secrets, they had been documenting how little the Alliance leadership cared about the people who served them. A senior officer stood up. Commander, are you saying the humans tried to turn your entire fleet? They did not try, HFY said simply. They succeeded. The audience erupted in surprised conversation. This was beyond anything they had imagined. Chan Ho's final message was the most devastating of all. The commander continued, waiting for quiet. You have a choice to make. You can follow orders and fight a battle that will cost thousands of lives for no purpose, except to preserve the power of leaders who see you as disposable. Or you can choose to build something better. What happened next? Individual ships began breaking formation, HFY said. Not retreating, not attacking, just stopping. Captains were refusing orders. Crews were demanding explanations from their commanders. The most disciplined military force in galactic history was falling apart. The display showed ship positions shifting chaotically. But that was only the beginning, the commander said. Human boarding parties began approaching our vessels. Not to attack, but to deliver something we had never seen before. What? Choice, HFY replied. The humans came aboard our ships carrying data pads with 2 documents. The first was a complete intelligence report on Alliance corruption and incompetence. The second was an invitation to join a new galactic confederation based on equality and mutual respect. They were recruiting enemy forces in the middle of a battle. They were offering hope to people who had forgotten what hope felt like, the commander corrected. And it worked. Ship after ship declared neutrality or switched sides entirely. Within hours, the Alliance fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its original strength. HFY's voice grew quiet. I was on the bridge when our captain received a visit from a human boarding party. The leader was a Marine named Wu Jin, accompanied by a diplomatic officer called He Wan. What did they offer your captain? They offered him the choice to save his crew, the commander said. Wu Jin showed our captain intercepted orders from Alliance Command. If the battle went badly, our ship was designated as an acceptable loss. Our lives had already been written off by our own leaders. He Wan then presented an alternative, HFY continued. Safe passage for our entire crew to any world we chose. Full amnesty for anyone who wanted to join the human cause. and compensation for families of anyone who had been killed following Alliance orders. Did your captain accept? He asked for time to consult with his officers, the commander replied. While we debated, Haywan did something that settled the question for all of us. What? She showed us a message from Earth, HFY said. A recording of human children singing a song they had composed for all the brave soldiers who are far from home. These children had never met us, had no reason to care about us, but they wanted us to know that someone was thinking about us. The commander's voice nearly broke. I had served the Alliance for 30 years. In all that time, no one had ever asked if I missed my family. No one had ever acknowledged that I might be afraid or lonely or homesick. But these human children, the supposed enemies of civilization, cared about the emotional welfare of enemy soldiers. Our entire ship surrendered within minutes, he continued, not to military force but to compassion. The humans had shown us what we had been missing all our lives, the simple recognition that we mattered as individuals. The display showed the final battle statistics. When the fighting ended, less than 10% of the original Alliance fleet was still loyal to Alliance command. The rest had either switched sides or declared neutrality. The greatest military force in galactic history had been defeated not through superior firepower, but through superior understanding of what motivates people to fight. What happened to those who remained loyal to the Alliance? The humans let them go, HFY said. Admiral Chan Ho broadcast a final message to the remaining ships. You have chosen to continue following your orders. We respect that choice. You are free to return to your territory.